Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's student Rabbi Shmuel here with you with another little Devar Torah commentary on this week's Torah portion. And let's get right to it, because this is kind of an interesting portion. So this portion is called Shelach, or Shelach Lecha, which means take for yourself. Okay, and what is the taking for oneself here? God, Hashem, is telling Moses, okay, when you go into the land, okay, so he says to Moshe, if you want, okay, and that's the whole point of Shelach Lecha, if you want, go ahead, send out some spies, okay, to the promised land, the land of milk and honey, the land that I will show you, and have them look it over and come back and give you a report, all right? And as most of us know, that didn't go very well. Okay, so that's the bulk of this particular portion. But and we're going to talk about that. We're going to address that a little bit more in depth in a couple of minutes. But let's talk a little bit more about what else this portion entails. Well, they talk about the libations. You know, the wine, the part of the wine that's part of the sacrifices. All right, there was a lot of different things that they used. It also talks about somebody who sins, who does an intentional sin, who worships an idol, or does something that really kind of denigrates Hashem as the one true God. The penalty is that person will be cut off from his people or her people. And that word, karet, has had a lot of different interpretations. The rabbis in the Middle Ages used that as the model of punishment, which was excommunication. Somebody does something against the community, well, they're away from the community for, 6 months, whatever it was, okay? But it also has a more serious and severe penalty. That person's soul gets cut off from his people, which means we're all created in God's image. We all have this soul, this nefesh, that's part of Hashem. Somebody who denigrates Hashem, blasphemy, that person's cut off. Their soul's gone. Okay, it's quite a very severe topic to think about. It's quite an interesting subject to consider, but that's really kind of the ultimate penalty. The end of the portion, after all that, after the spies report, okay, ends with part of the Shema, and we'll come to that in a few minutes, okay? But first, let's talk about the spies, all right? So, Hashem says to Moshe, Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, for yourself, if you want, send the spies into the land. Now, why did Hashem put it that way? You would think that if God says to Moses, go take the land, okay, again, after this rescue, after the plagues, after rescuing the Israelites from Pharaoh, after Pharaoh came out to them, there was the cloud, there was the pillar of fire that kept them at bay, there was the splitting of the sea, there was the manna, there was the quail, there was the water. I mean, at this point, why would you doubt? If Hashem says take the land, you should go take it, right? You just go do it, okay? So, Moses, I guess, felt that the people needed a little bit of reassurance. So he picks great men from each of the tribe, the head of each particular tribe, to go out and scout out the land. So there was 12 spies, okay, including Hoshea ben Nun, which was his kind of a sidekick, his protege, his right-hand person, if you will. And there was also Caleb, okay? And these were two people that just had absolute faith. In fact, Moses was so worried about Hoshea going in there and being corrupted, he kind of foresaw that. He changed his name. He gave him a Yud at the beginning of his name, called him Yehoshua now, okay? So the Yud Hey now is God. It's the name of God, Yah, right? One of the names of God. So he now had part of God in his name to kind of spiritually protect him, okay? So the spies go out, they scour out the land, and they bring back some figs and some pomegranates and some grapes, to show the bounty of the land. But meanwhile, Caleb and Yehoshua kind of split up a little bit. Caleb goes to Hebron, And I believe it was, Caleb goes to Hebron to see the cave of Machpelah, which was where our patriarchs were and matriarchs were buried. Hoshea goes on, kind of takes off by himself. But the rest of the spies, there were 10 spies, they go out and they come back with an absolute scathing report. He says first of all, the land is inhospitable. We're really going to have to work our tails off to make this work, because they were used to being pampered. They were used to being fed and clothed, and their clothes, nothing happened to their clothes, and being protected from the elements. Now, guess what? You're on your own, right? And the land is it's a wilderness, okay? It's not that it's inhospitable, but it's going to take a little bit of work. They also said that, my gosh, they were giants. Now, there were some fierce warriors. There were some Canaanite tribes that had some pretty buff people there, okay? But the way they described them as Nephilim, giants, the giants that existed before the flood. These people were powerful. We were like, remember the phrase? We were like grasshoppers to them, They were so overpowering, and they're just giving this horrible report. Now, some rabbis say they really didn't say anything wrong, okay? What they said was accurate. Yeah, farming, you don't just drop a few seeds down and all of a sudden you've got fruit, right? You got to work a little bit. You got to put some sweat into it. You got to get, well, in this case, the animals and the plows, and you got to work the land, and then you get your produce, okay? Nothing wrong there, okay? Giants, well, yeah, the people were a little bit more hardy than the Israelites. Sure, they were. So it wasn't really in what they reported, it was how they reported it and what they did with it. Okay, now in modern times, we're used to the word spinning, okay? You take part of the truth, okay? And this is how propaganda works too. You take part of the truth and then you spin it. Then you put a bent on it to make it seem different, okay? So in contrast to this, and let's talk about a couple of guys that didn't spin the truth, which was Joshua and Caleb. Joshua and Caleb are they're looking at each other going, hey, of course there's going to be some work involved. We're free men now. We got to go toil a little bit, and it may be a little difficult, but whatever. Hashem is behind us. Sure, there's people to conquer, but you know what? Look at what God did for us already. Why is anybody doubting that it may not be easy, but it's going to be successful? There's no doubt. And the spies were like, oh no, there's no way. We want to we go again. We want to go back to Egypt where we had pots of meat, and we had free food, and they just couldn't accept the fact that they didn't have faith. Okay, they kept losing their faith, losing their religion, to quote the popular song. And it's interesting, we could take this one step further. A lot of people look at the Torah, look at our history, look at our holy scriptures, and there's a popular TV personality, cable personality, who likes to call it the book of Jewish fairy tales, okay? Well, maybe you can go on archaeological digs to find the Ark of Noah, to find the cave of Machpelah, do DNA tests whether really, was it really Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their wives, and, maybe even Adam and Eve are supposed to be in there too, okay? According to Kabbalah, right? But when you look at the personalities, the character, who these people were, okay? In modern psychology, this is sort of an abusive personality. People who are abused, they get attached, okay? They have some type of connection with their abusers. So in a sense, they have this relationship with their abusers, and they tend to see them not in a real light. They tend to see them in a very tainted, rose-colored light, okay? And we're seeing that here 3,500 years ago. So in a sense, we're seeing a psychological proof, because these types of personalities have only been identified and discussed with the advent of the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Psychiatric Disorders, that's come out within the last 50, 60, 70 years, okay? So it's interesting that these people's personality fit this to a T. These people had no faith. They didn't. It was like, well, they're like, well, Hashem has rescued us. He protected us, he fed us, and they're like, yeah, but what has he done for us today? What is he going to do for us tomorrow? Well, they weren't able to accept that. And that was their downfall. So Hashem said, you know what? You had 10 spies. They were gone for 40 days. Guess what? A day for a year. All right, you will now wander in the desert for 40 years, or 39. That was what was left of the 40 years. Now, for those of you who might be heavy into astrology, okay, there's a couple of different ways in astrology to predict the future, supposedly, okay. One way is just to look at the transiting planets, okay? Where are the planets today compared to where they were when you were born, all right? And they just kind of look at different houses, the signs, the relationships, and they give you a little bit of a forecast. But then there's more of where's my life going? And modern astrologers use the day for a year method. So if you're 30 years old, for example, they will look at your birth chart and they will progress it 30 days, day for a year, okay? And they will tell you where you are today. So it's interesting, this is kind of where it came from, okay? So interestingly enough, okay, the people, of course, were like, now they're repenting. Oh, no, we don't want to do this, and too late though, okay? So in the remaining time, let's talk about how this particular portion ends. It ends with the last paragraph of the Shema, about the tzitzit. Tell the people tell the Israelites that on the four corners of your clothes, that's how they wore clothes back then. It had four corners. Put the tzitzit, a little thread from the techelet that was a shellfish that they either can't identify or doesn't exist anymore, had this blood that was like blue ink, and they'd color that one tassel with the blue ink. And it's interesting because after all this, after these people just kept losing faith, Hashem gives them a commandment. It says, put the tzitzit on your clothes, and when you look at it, you will know to follow my commandments and not follow your heart, not follow your eyes. Don't do what you want, do what you have to based on the commandments. So with that, thank you again for listening. Shabbat Shalom. And we look forward to seeing you in Shul tomorrow night, Friday night. We're doing a service, a Friday night service, and we hope to see you there. Shabbat Shalom.